Miss Nina here, and welcome back to the classroom. In particular, welcome to Grammar Rules. Right, guys? It's awesome. It rules. Right? Right? Okay, maybe that wasn't exactly your reaction, but grammar does rule. It's so important, and you need to know it. It's important if you want to go into business. It's important no matter what career you go into. It's important for your university careers, and it's important so that you do well on the final exam coming up. So, let's get down to it. This video, I want to introduce the present perfect tense. Ta-da! In this video, I am going to teach you the tense, how to form it, how it's used, and why it's used. Then, when we come back to the classroom, we are going to apply what you've learned. So essentially, what I'm doing right now is flipping the classroom, which means you're taking the classroom home with you on your little thumb drive. You're taking this video home with you, watching it, learning about the tense at home, and then you're coming back to the classroom and we together are going to apply the language in worksheets and in conversation. The reason I'm doing it this way instead of the traditional way is because I really want you to master this tense and this grammar. This can be a little bit tricky for some people. So I want to be there with you while you are doing the worksheet. So you can ask me any question you need to, you can work with your classmates, and together we're going to master this thing, you know? Let's do it. All right, the present perfect tense is, for example, I've been sick all week. Another example is, I have been to Thailand. Have you been to Thailand? Okay, so what is the present perfect tense? Let's look at how it's formed first, at how we create the tense. Here we are, present perfect. To create the present perfect, use the present tense of have. So you use have or has, depending on the conjugation, right? Plus the past participle. So these two verbs together create the present perfect tense. Some of you guys call the past participle the V3, and that comes from your grammar worksheets, I think, that you've done in past classes, where the V1 is the present simple tense, the V2 is the past simple tense, and so then the V3 is the past participle. So that's things like write, wrote, written. Written is your V3, or your past participle. Or swim, swam, swum. Swum is your past participle. So let's look at a couple examples, like the example I gave earlier. I've been sick all week. I've been sick all week. Where is the present perfect tense? Have been. Let's see. Let's move you guys a little bit closer so you can see what's going on here. Yep. How's that? All right. Hi guys. Okay, cool. Here we go. I've been sick all week. Here, in the apostrophe VE, is my present tense of have. I have. And then been is the past participle, is your V3 again, right? Okay, so what does this mean? I've been sick all week. And how is it different from I was sick all week? Firstly, what tense is was? I'm hoping that I just heard you say correctly that it is the past tense, the past simple tense specifically. So what's the difference between these two guys? All right, I'm going to show you a timeline. You know how I like these timelines. Here is our timeline. Here's the past. Here's the future. And this line is now. If we are talking about the past simple tense, what happens to this timeline? It's happened in the past, right? And it's something that was completed in the past. It has nothing to do with now, and it has nothing to do with the future. It happened in the past, and it's done, and we leave it there in the past. So, I was sick all week meant that for that week, whatever that week you were talking about, that was when you were sick. So let's say this is that week. That week. You were sick all that week. And now you are no longer sick because that action was completed in the past. That's why you used the past tense. Now, if you are using the present perfect tense and you are saying, I've been sick all week, that means that it is something that started in the past but affects you right now, at this moment, at the moment you are speaking. And it's very likely it will continue into the future. So, I'm going to put a dotted line here because it's not mandatory that it will continue into the future. It's just very likely that it will continue into the future. I've been sick all week. It started at the beginning of the week. I'm still sick now. And I'm not going to miraculously get better at this very instant. I wish I was, but I'm not. I'm probably going to continue being sick for the next day, maybe a couple of days, because that's why I'm using the present perfect tense. Okay. This is what is super important about the present perfect tense. Everything comes back to this timeline. So, the present perfect tense means that something started in the past, affects the present, and is likely going to continue into the future. Okay, so here we are. Here is a close-up of that definition for the present perfect tense. Again, we use the present perfect tense when something happened in the past and it affects the present, and it is likely to continue in the future. If you need to stop this video so that you can write down these notes, please do so now. Now that you know the definition of the present perfect as well as the timeline, I need you to know how and when to use this tense. So let's talk about it. There are two major ways that I need you to know how to use the present perfect. One is the exact way we just talked about. When something happened in the past, affects the present, and is likely to continue into the future. The second way, though, is what I call the show-off tense. This is when you're showing off to your friends. You're telling them mostly about your experience. Things that you've done, places you've been, movies you've seen, strange things that you've eaten, things like this. You're going to show off with the present perfect tense. There are your two ways. Let me show you those bullet points up on, here they are. Whoop. Here are the bullet points for those two ways. Again, number one, something that happened in the past affects the present and is likely to continue in the future. And number two, to talk about your experience up to the present time. That's what I call the show-off tense. Pause this now if you need to take notes on those 2 points. So let's start with this first point. Again, the first point is we use the present perfect when something started in the past, affects the present, and is likely to continue into the future. So I've written 4 sentences on the board when we always use the present perfect. Number 1, I've got Nancy and Drew have been a couple for 6 months. They started dating in the past, right? 6 months ago. They're still dating now, and it's likely that they're going to continue dating until Nancy finds out that Drew's a jerk or whatever. But we don't know when that's going to be. So until we know when that will be, we're using the present perfect. My next example is, I've lived in Myanmar since last summer. So again, this is since last summer. I moved to Myanmar in the past, last summer, a year and a half ago. I still live in Myanmar. Welcome, here we are. And I am planning on being here in the future. I'm still here now. I'll be here in 5 minutes. I'm planning on coming to class tomorrow. I'll still be here. There's the present perfect tense. Now, that's different than I lived in Myanmar. How is I've lived in Myanmar, I have lived in Myanmar, different from I lived in Myanmar? How is the present perfect tense of that sentence different than the past simple tense of that sentence? It's different because that's something that started in the past and affects me now and is continuing in the future. So this is a personal example for me. So I use the present perfect tense when I talk about living in Myanmar. I have lived in Myanmar for the last year and a half, since last summer. However, if I say I lived in Myanmar, it means that that action is completed. It happened in the past, and it is not happening to me right now. There's the difference. So if I say I lived in Myanmar, it means I no longer live there. I have moved on to somewhere else. So I personally cannot talk about that with Myanmar. I could talk about that with Thailand. I lived in Thailand for 2 years. And I can say that because I'm not living in Thailand anymore. That happened several years ago. It's a completed action that happened in the past. It does not affect me in the present. Okay? One other thing to check out here. Since. This word since is a trigger word. When you see that in a sentence, it is very, very, very likely you will use the present perfect. Okay? Remember that. All right. Next example, school has started. We have our present perfect has started. Here's our V3, started, and here's my present tense of have, in this case, has. So this means that school started in the past, a while ago, and it's still going on right now, and it's likely to continue. It will continue until 3:30 when the bell rings and we're out of here, or whatever, okay? Last example, I have had this cough since last month. Doctor, I've had this cough since last month. I got it a month ago. I'm still coughing right now. And I need you to cure me, but until you do, I'm still going to cough in the future. I hope this is starting to make sense. If it's not, please write down your questions and bring them to class. All right? Let me move aside here. If you want to write down these examples, please do. Pause the video now. The second way that we use the present perfect tense is what I like to call the show-off tense, because you're showing off. You're showing off to your friends everything you have done or anything you have never, ever done. So what we're really doing here is you're talking about your experience. And that goes back to our timeline. Because check it out. Your experience has to do with everything in your past, everything in your lifetimes. That is what your experience is. And so that is why and how you are talking about it now, in the present. And your experience is going to continue until you change that experience. But it's going to continue into the future with you. So let me use the example of a popular dish here in Myanmar is century egg salad. I have never eaten century egg salad. I have never eaten it. Not in my entire past. Not in my 31 years of existence have I eaten century egg salad. And that's why I'm talking about it now, because it's my experience in my past, right? It affects me right now in the present moment. And that experience of having never eaten century egg salad is going to continue with me into the future, into tomorrow, into this weekend, into whenever, until I sit down at a tea shop and I'm served century egg salad and I eat it, right? But that's not going to change. It hasn't changed in my past. It is what it is now, and it's going to continue in my future. I hope that makes sense. Again, if it doesn't, write down your questions. But let's look at some examples first. I've got a bunch of examples right here. Here's one way we talk about it that's a pretty popular way of talking about travel. When we talk about where we have been or where we have not been, where we have never been, we use the present perfect tense. My example here is, I've been to North America and South America. Oh, look at me, I'm showing off. I'm telling you all the places I've been, right? Here is the present tense of have. I've. There's my present tense. And here, been, there's my V3, right? My past participle. Together, this makes up the present perfect. And this, I'm talking about my experience. This is what I have done in the past. And it affects me now as I'm talking about it. And that goes with the future, right? You guys get that? Cool. Where have you traveled? I've been to North America and South America. Where have you traveled? You also use the present perfect then to ask other people about their experience. Note the way that the question is formed. You guys are pretty good at this, but note it anyway. Here is the present tense of have. Check it out. There is your past participle, your V3. Be sure that you put the object right in the middle. Okay. Moving on, Mr. Josh has skydived. That's in his experience. So we have the present tense of have, and because it's conjugated with the third person, Mr. Josh, it's has. And then we've got our P3 for skydive. Skydived. Great. Talking about experience, showing off again. Mr. Josh has skydived. Next example, Miss Nina has never skydived. And for the record, I will not jump out of a plane. Not with a parachute? No way. Miss Nina has never skydived. All right, check it out. Just like in our first example, I told you about a trigger word, sense. We'll usually use the present perfect with the word sense. You will usually use the present perfect with the word never. If you're using never in a sentence, never have I done that. I've never been there. I've never eaten that. I've never seen that. You're using the present perfect tense. Never. Another trigger word. All right, moving on. Have you ever been to Shwedagon? Ever is another trigger word. Note the way the question is formed. Have is at the beginning of a have question. And then your past participle goes right here. So the object goes after have, just like when you form a usual question, a usual have question. And then you've got your adverb ever after you. Have you ever, and then the V3, been. Have you ever been to Shwedagon? All of you guys have. I've already seen that movie. Already. Boom. Another trigger word. So our trigger words so far are since, never, ever, and already. There's 4 good trigger words. I have already seen that movie. I've already seen that. I'm showing off, right? I'm telling you, I've already done that. It affects me in the present. I don't want to see it again, or maybe I do want to see it again. Whatever my opinion is, it happened in the past, I saw it already, but that affects my answer here in the present when I'm telling you. Well, Mike has not seen it. Here's has. Here's how we do the negative. There's not. And here's seen. There's our V3 again. So again, in this example of how you're using the present perfect, in this case you're using it to kind of show off or to talk about your experience. All right, you've made it. You have made it to the end of this grammar video because that is all I want you to know about the present perfect tense for now. You need to know the timeline. You need to know the 2 ways that I am asking you to use the present perfect. So remember, something that happened in the past affects the present and is likely to continue in the future, and to also show off. You're going to need to know that because you're going to have a pop quiz next class. So if you got to the end of this video, you have the advantage. I'm going to ask you to draw the timeline. I'm going to ask you for those 2 points, and I am going to ask you to come up with your own sentences. You may not plagiarize my examples, but you can use them as models. So, figure out sentences that talk about your experiences. Where have you been? What have you eaten? What have you never eaten? Tell me things like that. I'll see you guys in class.